In my mind, there's one choice for roofing around here, and I'd go with your best choice. Whether it's time to replace your roof or repair it, Best Choice Roofing provides top-notch roofing services tailored to meet the unique needs of Detroit homes and businesses. They serve the region and inside the city of Detroit, too. You can find out more at bestchoiceroofing.com/Detroit. That's bestchoiceroofing.com/Detroit. Or call 313-474-7031. That's 313-474-7031. Hey friends, hello and welcome to your Daily Detroit. This is your show for Friday, March 7th, 2025. I am Jer Stays coming to you from our studio at Techtown. And across the table from me is Mr. Friday himself. And you know what, my friend Devin O'Reilly, we've been able to spend the morning together.
Yes, we've been together all morning. How wonderful.
Professionally, of course.
Professionally, of course. That's business first as usual.
Yes. We went to a couple of places. If you can't tell, we're actually recording this on Thursday because we went to a coffee shop and then we also went to the Downtown Detroit Spring Forum, or annual meeting, getting a little bit of an update of developments in downtown Detroit. We're going to talk about both those things because let's start with the fun. We went to the new-ish Cargo Coffee.
Yes, a little brief stop there. It was very convenient as we were leaving the DDP Spring Forum to stop at Cargo Coffee there. I remarked to you, wow, we talked about this on the air a couple times. I actually never have really driven past it like that, and we were in need of a little caffeine pick-me-up, so it seemed like the perfect opportunity.
It is at Mack and Woodward, or Martin Luther King and Woodward, depending on what side of the street you're talking about. It took up the old Starbucks space, and a lot of people were skeptical it would do well because of the things happening with the old Starbucks space. But so far, seems to be so good. Actually, lots of seating.
Yeah.
Some people thought it would end up transitioning to some sort of grab and go only. There's lots of seating there. There's things to check out. One thing I will note, they keep the back door locked, exit only. You got to go in through the front, but very bright, very modern, very, very literally. I mean this in like literal decor choice. Very white, lots of whites.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very clean, bright, new. It's a newer place. That's one way to go. Real quick. So when we talked about the Starbucks location and the issues we had, we thought, that corner is really busy, and there was issues with kind of people kind of walking in who weren't really customers. One way to kind of mitigate that, I guess, is you just open it up. You make it bright and airy and glass everywhere, so everything is visible. Do you know what I mean? I think so. That's probably a good way. Is like you just see everything. You see everyone walking in. You see who's in the shop at all times. That just keeps. Maybe that does keep it. I don't know. And I think it helps.
As we were driving up, you could literally see every single seat, every single thing. It was like looking into a fishbowl.
Mm-hmm. No confusion about what it is, so you don't have anyone wandering in. Where do I get it? What can I get here? So yeah, I think it makes sense. And we opted for the cold brews. I was a little confused about the menu because I just like black coffee. I don't mind flavor in it if it's black. Like you can get Nespressos that are different flavors, but I don't want any syrup or milk in my coffee. And there's a little bit of a misunderstanding about what that was, so I opted for just the black nitro. It's perfectly fine. I mean, you can't really screw it up, but they did a great job.
This place is definitely geared towards, I want to say, dessert drinks. So yeah. I have the Amaretto cold brew. It's definitely on the sweet side. They have a variety of things other than coffee there, refreshers, pastries. This is, yes, coffee, but coffee plus in a big way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Breakfast pastries, things like that. It was really good. I was in my mind, I was like, well, this is a tough area, and where are you going to park? But we just parked right on Woodward. There's spots right there on Woodward. So if people are kind of stopping by and need like a quick grab and go, you can just kind of pull in. There's probably a handful of parking spots right off the street there. Just walk right in.
And then there's the parking behind it as well. So, hey.
Right, good experience.
I am extra caffeinated and sugared because I've drunk half of this thing before we got to air. So.
Cheers to Cargo.
I know, kidding.
It's with a Q. They spell with a Q.
I believe it's a Florida-based chain.
Okay.
So, but local ownership. Now, we went to the DDP Spring meeting, the Downtown Detroit Partnership, not Diamond Dallas Page. Although
Who's going
wrestling,
to get that reference? Wow.
although wrestling in Shed 3 in Eastern Market would be amazing.
It would. They could
Put
totally
the,
do
put
that.
the big like square in this.
Yeah.
Oh man, do some like risers, like high school style seat risers.
That
Oh,
would be awesome. You could have Eric Larson throwing up the DDP, the Diamond Cutter sign. Does anyone remember that?
Oh my gosh.
Do you remember what it is?
Yes, I do
If you're
remember.
listening and you can't see it, the Diamond Dallas Page Diamond Cutter sign is also like the Rock Dynasty, Rockefeller Records. I'm making a lot of millennial references, but
So are you saying that you're encouraging a cage match between downtown Detroit CEOs?
wow, man, that's a topic right there. I don't know, man. Eric looks like he stays in really good shape.
I would
so
not like to take a chair to the back of the head from him.
Larson would be formidable. I'm just going to say that. I don't want to get too deep into that. It's probably an off the rails type of episode, but that's that would be interesting.
Yeah. By the way, if you don't know, we actually have a private podcast, Off the Record, Off the Rails. We might actually have a debate.
That's one we would talk about on Off the Rails.
Yeah, we might do that. We might do that there. Anyway, as far as the news, the big focus was everything that they've been doing in the last year. I think a few key points I wanted to highlight: the goal of 10,000 residential units. They're making progress towards that. They rolled out more than 600 new residential units in the last year. There's another 600 plus under, and these are inexact numbers. There's a report you can go online. I'm going off the top of my head, but the goal being 10,000 residential units in that immediate downtown area to try to boost up that population. They talked about how the Downtown Detroit Partnership is taking over a number of the green spaces, not necessarily parks, but things like medians and walkways from the city, kind of alleviating some of that burden from the city.
Think about like the Washington Boulevard, median there. What?
Jefferson Avenue.
Yeah, exactly. So think like that stuff.
Yeah. The big focus, Renaissance Center and everything around it. I don't know if there was tons of news, but there were details that I had an ear for that I wanted to bring up with you.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm saying this in a good way because they have to do this. Like, this is becoming a kind of media campaign, a PR campaign that they need to do. And you saw Dave Masteron and Jared Fleischer at GM and Rocket Bedrock respectively, kind of doing this show at DPC. And it's worthy because they do need to kind of, like you said, Jared, for people like us who are on the conference circuit, a lot of it wasn't new information, but the general public isn't getting this information. And that's why I think a lot of them have such a negative feeling about what's happening at the RenCen. Knowledge is power, and once you hear them explain what the vision is, you get it.
I think so. I think it'll be up. Obviously, people need to make their own thoughts, but a few of the ideas that I think were key that I got. One, just from a purely aesthetic point of view, it'd be interesting to see a public observation tower in the style of something you would see at maybe the Hudson Yards or the Empire State Building, have observation at the top of the RenCen. That was a detail that I heard in this that I thought was an interesting thing too. Yes, there's the restaurant up there, but creating an actual observation experience.
Yeah, right now, if for people who don't know, the Highlands is up there on, I believe, the 71st floor, and the 72nd floor is just event space. So the actual top right now, it's being used. I'm gonna say it's unused, but it's giant. I've been up there actually a lot of times. Looked at having a wedding there. I've been to a wedding there. It's just big open event space. So you could definitely do something with that.
I did not know that there was another story on top of that.
There is, yeah.
Good to know. Oh, a phrase that came through a lot. Tell me if you're surprised to hear this. Family friendly.
Oh, I'm not surprised at all, and I'm happy to hear it. But because think about it. What do we want this to be? We want this to be a continuation of the world-class riverfront that we have. And what is the riverfront if not family friendly? Or what is the vision for the riverfront if not a family friendly experience? I mean, my gosh, the West Riverfront is built. The West Riverfront development that's being undertaken is built around these giant parks, right? With a giant bear and what's a squirrel or something. Like it's
Otter,
all
I'm not sure.
Otter, sure. It's all leaning into that family friendly atmosphere. And why not? I mean, what's the alternative? We're going to make it for nightlife, for singles. I mean, family friendly makes sense.
There's some things that should be for that.
I'm sure.
I would actually argue. But they said that downtown Detroit in practicality ends at Jefferson Avenue. And a lot of the the public support side of this that they're looking for is to spend a lot of money, connecting Jefferson Avenue and the riverfront, but also turning those surface parking lots that are by the RenCen into more of a Navy Pier style activation. I was glad to see some acknowledgement And I know I've gotten the hate comments, but I have made my points around how I think that there are still a lot of improvements that the Detroit riverfront could make, especially when you visit it in context of some place like Chicago, where there's a ton of restaurants, there's a ton of shops, there's things to do. I love our riverfront, and I understand it's won a bunch of awards, but I still believe it's very incomplete.
Yeah.
And I think that something in that zone, and they're saying Navy Pier in Chicago is an inspiration for this, where people can come down from everywhere across the city, across the region, and this really be a hub of things. I think that's a positive step forward. It's also not a cheap step forward.
Yeah, reframe your thinking. If you're someone who's against or bearish on this RenCen development idea, you're taking 2 mothball towers down, but I'm giving you a Navy Pier style experience on the riverfront. Doesn't that sound now that sounds a little bit better? And we're redeveloping the parking lots. It's just a value add is the way I see it. And that's why I would encourage people to think about it. It's a value add. They're going to be adding more stuff to do. And like you said, Jerry, you're right. As wonderful as the riverfront is in its current situation, there's not a ton to do. You can walk on it. You can bike on it. There's like that little carousel.
And there's the barge.
Yeah, I mean it's fine. It's perfectly fine. Obviously, it's very nice. But I agree with there is way more that could be done. I mean, the potential there is even much greater than what it currently stands.
They were talking about residential in the context of downtown, and they were showing pictures of what might happen if you bury I-375 and put up some new apartment buildings. They were talking about residential in context of the RenCen and how important it is to get people down there. It was interesting to see how they were talking about drawing in a regional audience to move downtown, because it is true. You have to look at downtown Detroit as not just Detroit's downtown, but the region's downtown. And that is the case in pretty much every region in America. Okay. The big city downtown is that way. When they talk about bringing residents down and convincing residents to go there, I'm in the middle of a search for a place right now.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you this. I have no idea that there's if I were to go just on the fact, not that I host Daily Detroit, but if I were looking around at anything out there, I have no idea about the workforce level, affordable housing. All I know is that the rack rates are really expensive. Many places near more than $2,000 a month. There is no you have to be competitive. So if you're going to say, okay, we're not trying to attract people from New York or Chicago, we want people to move here from the rest of the region, your rack rate pricing needs to make sense when somebody's breezing through and say, okay, I can get 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom in Ferndale for $1,400 versus $1,900. What am I getting? Like, it needs to be a clearer story. I feel like I understand the point of the incentives. I understand that there's qualifications, all that other stuff. I don't think it's clear. And I don't think that people really want to apply for affordable housing for a regular place, because I think in people's minds, it's bad branding.
Well, to push back, I mean, there's 2 parts to this. One, I agree with you. One, I disagree. One, I agree with you that the developments and the buildings themselves don't do a good job of advertising their affordable units. It's like, it's a secret. You got to know that most buildings have affordable units. You got to ask about them because the realtors don't want to tell you that.
They want to make the most money possible off of the highest price possible.
So that is a problem because most of the buildings that you probably go into, if you were looking at buildings downtown, almost all of them have some affordable units. They just don't advertise them. So that is a problem. But I still would push back and say, if you're not doing it that way, you don't want people to have to apply, and the math then doesn't work. How do we make affordable units if it costs so much to do the development?
I think that's part of the underlying challenge with Detroit right now, because you're seeing apartment buildings pop up in Royal Oak. You're seeing them pop up in Auburn Hills. If you want to say you're regionally competitive, then you have to figure out the math somehow. I don't know all the answers to it, but at the end of the day, if you tell somebody, okay, it's X more to live in this place, they're going to want to know why it's X more. They're not. And if you don't know right off the bat that there's another affordable option, that affordable actually means making 50 grand or 55 or 60 grand, that's all stuff that you're just not going to be able to be competitive. People are just going to be like, yeah, I'm going to take Auburn Hills. I'm going to take whatever.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. Let's get to the core of this, Jer. Because this is how you think about it. Okay, we got to build these cheaper, or we got to make a more incentive for a developer to build something with affordable units. Are you okay then saying, all right, We will designate a large amount, not even like the application, just affordable. We will lower the cost. We will lower the cost of the monthly rent on these apartments, but we need some kind of tax incentives to do it.
Aren't you needing tax incentives now?
Yeah. Okay. So
do you know what I mean? Like,
so-
I think
right.
the program needs. I'm not arguing whether or not there should be incentive. I'm arguing.
I'm just saying that's the trade-off.
The programs, it's not clear to the end user. Like,
Right.
it's not clear to the public. It's not clear to the public that this is a thing that's affordable, because
Yeah.
to the public conversation, and I know in our comments, okay, I know in our feedback, I went and covered that affordable development that's happening in Brush Park. Very, very affordable. We're talking like $400 a month affordable. That is what people think affordable housing is.
Mhm.
And I think we have the wrong verbiage. I don't think we have clear communication on what this means or how to get it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think there's a fundamental problem there.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know how we solve it yet.
I don't know either. And that's why we have a very smart audience at dailydetroit@gmail.com or 313-789-3211 to tell us things, because there's people smarter than us out there.
There's many. But I'll just leave it at this. The RenSen is a perfect place to kind of figure that out. I think the RenSen development, the whole footprint of all of it, that is a good place to figure out what this balance is with affordability, how we talk about it. I think it's a good thing. And that's why I think the project needs to continue forward.
They did mention I-75 caps and 375 changes. Are you still holding on your bullish on the riverfront design for the RenSen with the two towers, especially with how that goes? Are you still bearish on the caps?
I'm just not ready to talk about it. You know, I've said what I've said. Like, that's a 5+ year. That's a 5 or more than 5 year plan. I just want people to understand that. Let's finish the RenSen. Like, this is such a big hulking task. Let's finish that, and then we can talk about the caps. I'm just not even ready to let myself into what I consider that fantasy land of capping everything, building apartments. I mean, some of the renderings you saw were absolutely beautiful, but that's not a Detroit that I see in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. I mean, literally they're just these 5-6 story multi-level apartment buildings just built across this beautiful boulevard that once was a freeway. That's a fantastic idea, and I want to get there, but we got other stuff to do. We got so much going on right now. I'm just not ready to mentally kind of focus on that.
Let's switch gears. We've got 2 more gears to go through, 2 more stories. Detroit 1 Million, Sam Robinson, credit to him, is saying that there will be an announcement for Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist's run for governor coming next week. We are not doing endorsements, but first impressions. This is still early. It is a busy Democratic race.
Yes, far from endorsements. We're covering the fact of what is actually happening. And this is starting to get a little bit of I don't want to say crowded race, but yeah, a little bit. You know, you have lanes being kind of designated, Duggan being this wild card independent. You have, I think, I don't think anyone of note has stepped up on the right, have they?
I mean, there's been a few people who are
Like I've heard Mike Rogers might.
Was it Nesbitt?
Yeah, Eric Nesbitt potentially. So like, okay, whatever. They'll figure that out. I
think there's still some.
I don't think
time
we
for
need
that.
to speculate on that side of things. I think the more interesting activity is happening on the center and left of the spectrum, with Duggan being this kind of big wild card, and then you have Benson, who's definitely going to run, being kind of the clear, I mean, I'm just saying right now, the clear progressive candidate. And then if you have Garland Gilchrist jumping into the race, that presents some interesting juxtapositions there, I have to say.
I feel like Garland has some really strong progressive bona fides, to be very honest with
absolutely
you.
does, yes.
And it is my experience, having interviewed him,
Mm-hmm.
he knows policy. Like, he knows the issues well, and he's inherently curious. And I don't say that often about people, you know, who are trying to go to run things. He is inherently curious. He does care about policy. And I've seen him over time really put a lot of care into, like, how would this thing affect that? Now, I don't know how that's going to translate, but I'm going to flag that because it is a remarkable amount of care that I have seen towards policy and ideas with him over the years.
And you can't knock him for the, like, you know, career politician type of thing, because he worked in the private sector for the majority of his life. He was at Microsoft. He was, you know, he's lived other places.
I'll be honest, there's part of me that's like, go get your money and go, like, work in tech. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I
He
feel like
kind of did a little bit, and maybe
but he's got, what I'm saying
Yeah.
is that I feel like he's got options.
Right. So if he did it, I would feel like he'd do it for the right reasons. So yeah, I mean, we're not going to get into policy or we're not going to get into differing policies yet with, him and Benson and Duggan, because we don't really know that yet. But he's a Detroiter. He lives in the city of Detroit, raises his family in Detroit, has been, I think, an effective lieutenant governor thus far. It'll be interesting.
I believe Benson is a Detroit resident too.
She is too. Yeah, she is too. I just wanted to, Benson
just
is too.
Because somebody's going to in the comments is going to say something.
No, she absolutely is a Detroit resident as well. So no, that's point for both of them if we're keeping score in that regard. So it'll be interesting. I'll just say that much right now. We don't know yet enough about policy lanes or how they're going to, obviously this is politics. We know how this has to work. You have to find a lane. You have to find what your platform is. What is your lane? And I don't know, if we were lining this up, Jer, where Benson versus Gilchrist falls on various issues.
I want to mention about one of your favorite topics, the champions of the West, meaning the University of Michigan. There is a new set of rankings from the Princeton Review of the top 10 dream colleges and universities in America. The University of Michigan is number 8. The list rolls down. Number 1 is MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. 2, Harvard. 3, Stanford. 4, Princeton. 5, Yale. 6, Columbia. 7, New York University. 8, U of M. 9, University of Pennsylvania. And 10, University of California, Los Angeles. I feel like this is a great indicator of the kind of magnet that Southeast Michigan can be, the power of things like UMCI happening in downtown Detroit. Michigan has a lot of momentum that I think sometimes we forget locally how big of a deal Michigan University can be.
Yeah, and I mean, a couple things to draw out from this is I think it's great to be on this list. I've been to half of these campuses, 5 out of 10, so I got a little bit of understanding of what some of these look like. Some of them, a lot of them are in big cities. So Ann Arbor falls kind of on the smaller end in terms of, is this a part of a big city? I mean, MIT and Harvard, if you've ever been there, they're literally next door to each other. You could walk from Harvard's campus to MIT's campus and not know you've switched campuses, frankly. They're right over there in the Cambridge area. So those kind of are it's a little splitting hairs. Beautiful campuses. I mean, if you've ever been to that area, Boston is just, it's incredible. You can't really recreate the topography and history of Boston, so I get it. But with some of the others, I do feel like there's some that are a kind of a bastion within not the best area. Like I know that for a fact with Yale University. So, I push back on some of these. I think U of M should actually be higher, frankly, Jared.
Are you only speaking of that because you're a U of M alum?
I'm a Michigander. Yeah. I'm gonna let's do this one for Michigan. But no, Ann Arbor is wonderful. I think we do sometimes take it for granted. It's not overstated to say that it is a world-class university. And so that's why I think we want to do more to connect Detroit in Ann Arbor.
That's when I talk to the public, I think when I get comments from people, I think that is the thing that's often missed is although Ann Arbor isn't the largest in population, it really is a engine of people. And if you can use something like what they're building with the Center of Innovation in Detroit as some sort of good reasoning to help increase those connections, I think that will help just in general.
Yeah, I think that better connections there, Detroit and Ann Arbor need to kind of talk to each other more, have more connection. And we're working on that because, a lot of these universities are tied to cities, New York, Pennsylvania, like I said, Boston, and the MIT Harvard connection. So a lot of these universities have that anchor city right there nearby, and so we should do that with Ann Arbor and Detroit.
I want to close with a final ask because voting ends when you're hearing this episode. If you're hearing it on March 7th, Friday, voting ends at 11:59 p.m. for Our Detroit's Best Podcast.
Can I say something? You know what? This is a really long list. When you go start filling this thing out, it's really long. So I don't want to put too much time commitment on our listeners. You can just go vote for the podcast. I don't care what else you do. Just go vote for the best podcast. Plunk your vote in that one. You don't have to spend 25 minutes filling or pressing the button on all these different things because there's 100 different categories.
But if something catches your eye,
sure,
support your neighbors.
All for that, but just make sure you hit daily.
Yeah, time is limited. If you are listening to this on Friday, you have a chance. If you're listening to it on Saturday, miss the window, unfortunately. But it really means a lot. It would be great for us to show up into that category. How do you feel? We haven't talked about how do you feel about being nominated for Best Podcast in Detroit?
It's great. Sometimes it feels like kind of like otherworldly because this isn't my life, like my my job and whatever. Like this is kind of just something you and I just started to do for fun together.
And we still have fun.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't even think about it like that. So to get that recognition sometimes is really cool. It's really awesome. I mean, I think what we do is just very natural, and I think authentic is the word I would use. Right? I mean,
There's no big script.
We don't have to be doing this. We script very little. Our opinions are always our own. We're not influenced by anyone but our own experiences on what we talk about. So I think authentic, and I think that comes through.
Well, if you feel like it and can do it, go over to OurDetroit.com. March 7th, that's Friday, before 11:59. Get that vote in. It would be much appreciated. Devin O'Reilly, so good to see you.
Yes, spent a good amount of time together this morning. Cheers to our cargo coffee, and here's to spring, hopefully right around the corner. I'm ready.
Well, with that, I'm Jer Stays.
I'm Devin O'Reilly.
Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful weekend. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll talk next week.